something incredibly interesting just happened in the Midnight Beta. Blizzard replaced the loading screen for the Midnight Zones with this incredibly intriguing artwork. As we know, Midnight is all about Quel'Thalas, but in this artwork, Quel'Thalas is barely even seen in the background, and the focal point is on what is south of it, the outline where Dalaran was, the Arathi highlands, Tirisfal grades, and everything else. To back this up, they confirmed they plan to revamp a few more classic zones in Midnight. They confirmed Forsaken being a part of Midnight. They updated the areas surrounding Stratholme and Arathi highlands are more relevant than ever. What is going to be the extent of this Eastern Kingdoms revamp, and what is this really going to look like? Anything Warcraft related, Warhammer, Destiny, pretty much any game you can imagine, you can get at the best market prices with my link in the description below on Gamivo. On top of that, I got mobile top-ups, software, a whole bunch of other things. Even better, if you use my code DORON, you will get another discount on top, so click my link in the description and check out Gamivo. So I've been going on and on about this for years now, literally. I think I got like a dozen videos on this talking about the Eastern Kingdom revamp, Lordaeron and everything, and really pretty much since Shadowlands this has been speculation based on data because they're constantly hinting at these areas being relevant once again. It all became super relevant with the Gilneas questline that we got where the Worgen finally reclaimed their lost kingdom, even though it was a little more underwhelming. I mean, we had pretty big expectations for this grand reclamation. However, we also got the Forsaken questlines about Undercity being reclaimed and the surrounding areas, and Arathi Highlands have been a hotspot for quite a while now. So all of this was really pre-World Soul Saga. It was kind of evident that they're setting something up here long term at some point in time. Probably the reason why many of these questlines were kind of underwhelming is the fact that they were really just setups for what is to come now in Midnight. So, since the War Within, and especially since the Midnight announcement, we got a bunch of interviews and data mine stuff that made it even more clear that Lordaeron and surrounding area revamp is happening, but the main reason I'm making this video is this really interesting, intriguing, but I would say mostly telling artwork of the loading screen, which can't really be a coincidence. So, the artwork itself is not actually new. I mean, this was data mined a little while back, but as you may know, Midnight itself is coming out in around 3 months. The beta is mainly wrapping up. I mean, we're not really here in the early stages where things are going to be drastically different. We are right now mainly in the polishing stages of the expansion, where it's really just bug fixing and some like random fixes, but nothing like too deep. So recently for the Midnight Zones in the beta, the loading screen was changed just a few days back to this very interesting artwork, which you might say, oh well, I mean, it's just Quel'Thalas in some mountains, not a big deal, you probably wouldn't even notice it. However, here's the thing, I mean, we've played through most of 12.0, we've even seen some things that happen after it. I mean, you got a video that you can watch on that as well, and we've seen the new zones, which is revamped and really enlarged Quel'Thalas, and we even saw the possible patch zone, the little troll island of the coast of Zulaman. But this artwork itself is very strange because despite the fact that the focus of 12.0 is entirely on Quel'Thalas, this artwork is showing Quel'Thalas all the way in the background. I mean, the spotlight here is obviously on the northern eastern kingdoms that border Quel'Thalas. Quel'Thalas is barely even seen with what appears to be the Isle of Quel'Danas with this like light ray, which is obviously the Sunwell. However, as you can see here, I mean, we see the Arathi Highlands wall, we see the city of Strong, we see Dalaran where it used to be, and we even see the outline of Gilneas in the Plaguelands, which you can't really say is just a coincidence. Why would they pick this artwork out of all the artworks that they have for Midnight? I mean, think about it. All these Midnight zones are based in Quel'Thalas, so why not just use a landscape of Quel'Thalas? This is literally like if we had a War Within loading screen, but it wasn't really Khazlagar, it was like Kalimdor and like Silitus with Khazlagar barely even seen in the background. Now, the reason why I think this is relevant and not just completely reaching is the other hints that I mentioned from the past few months that make this so incredibly likely. I mean, there's quite a lot of things going on at the same time where it's really not just a coincidence. So, as I said, at the start of the video, we had the entire setup for these areas for years, since pretty much the Shadowlands. However, since Midnight was announced a few months back, there have been a few official interviews where Blizzard outright said these things, plus we got some of the questlines. So, as you can probably see by now in the beta, we have a questline with Arathor of him going back to some older zones, most notably around Stratholme, Lightscope Chapel. Unfortunately, they hadn't really updated it much here other than changing that empty zone that was there in the past, and they have added it to Quel'Thalas, and they have also updated the mists around Stratholme to this red mists, which could potentially be a hint for something. There are NPCs talking about how crazy the red mist around Stratholme is, how mind-altering it is, so maybe it's not just gameplay stuff. The big deal though is the fact that the devs themselves have told us about the Forsaken being relevant in Midnight, and the fact that they plan to redo the zones. I mean, I'm not really making this up, you can literally find the interview from just 2-3 months back. They outright said that they plan to give a Midnight treatment to more classic zones, but not nearly on the same scale. So don't expect that Tirisfal Glades is now going to be exactly like Eversong quotes, but some things will be happening. I mean, partial revamps are pretty much guaranteed. Also, they outright said that they plan to do things with the Forsaken themselves in Midnight. First of all, Sylvanas was already involved in this storyline by the war within ending with 11.2.7. She kinda confirmed that she will return at some point. As you can probably see it by now, her dialogue was something like, "My time to return to the world of living is not now," but probably a bit later down the line. Then they said in the interview that the Forsaken themselves will get a bit of spotlight in this expansion. They won't be as relevant as the elves, and it's not going to be like a massive storyline, but they will be involved. So this in itself kind of confirms at least the Tirisfal Glades and Undercity involvement in this expansion. Then next down the line we of course have Quel'Thalas, and we now know that Anduin has actually returned to Stormwind, as Tyrellian is leading the Army of the Light, but Gen is actually the current leader of the Alliance, and he now controls Quel'Thalas, so that in itself kinda makes him quite relevant. Then we have the Arathi highlands that have been revamped literally all the way back in BFA, and they constantly have these like quest lines there and things happening. I mean, we have a pretty large quest line in the middle of the war within. Then we have the new Arathi kingdom that will definitely be relevant, and most importantly, visually, this entire zone was completely revamped. Then we have Dalaran being destroyed, but still kind of being relevant, and that foreshadowed building of the new Draenei capital that could really be anywhere on Azeroth, and I somehow feel like it could be around these parts. I mean, they could really revamp a zone together with this new Alliance capital. Furthermore, we've learned of some Scourge activity around the Plaguelands, and that they're launching offensives, which means the Plaguelands are still relevant and the Scourge is still relevant. So when you really take all this information into consideration and then you look at this artwork, you can see it is way more than just a random placeholder artwork that they just like randomly put into the beta. I mean, we got Quel'Thalas and Undercity being set for a revamp, we got the return of Sylvanas and the Blizzard interview talking about how they plan to make the Forsaken relevant in Midnight itself. We got a questline in the Plaguelands, we got Scourge activity, slight updates to the surrounding areas, and Stratholme. We got the Arathi highlands being more relevant than ever with constant questlines, and then Blizzard on top of all this shows the artwork of the Midnight zones, which is really a Quel'Thalas expansion, but Quel'Thalas is all the way in the background, barely even seen, with us outright seeing Strom, Arathi Wall, the outline where Dalaran was, and all the other areas that are not Quel'Thalas. I really think at this point this is not even a speculation. So I mean, revamps don't necessarily need to be on the scale of Cataclysm, where they got everything from scratch. I mean, you can see that they literally revamped the entirety of Arathi Highlands and built a brand new city there, while the surrounding areas are still stuck in the Cataclysm era. I feel like this kind of treatment is what is going to come for a few more zones. Just like how we got Undermine out of nowhere in the war within, we might be able to get Undercity and potentially even Quel'Thalas with more up-to-date graphics. Thanks for watching. Check out my video on how the Emerald Dream was literally retconned by clicking on the screen, and check out my video about Titan lore and Greek mythology that I've recorded live on site in the Italian mountains by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!